Hello everyone, welcome back from lunch. Did you have a good nibble? Who went for the cheese sandwich? Oh, was it only me? Okay. I was pretty excited. I was like, oh, I've not had a cheese sandwich in a while, but apparently that does not excite anyone else, and that's fine. We celebrate difference here at High Score. Difference of ideas, which is exactly, thank you. What a segue, which is exactly what we are going to be getting in this next session, which is speedruns. One concept, 5 minutes. This is a quick fire round where we have a couple of presenters who are going to be trying to teach, convince, show, storytell to you, but they only have 5 minutes within which to do so. At the 1 minute mark, I will yell at them, and then at the 20-second mark, I will start yelling at them even more. Don't worry, if they have more interesting things to say, there will be a Q&A at the end. You can join through the QR code on Slido. But jumping right in, we want to keep this quick. We want to keep the energy up. We have Gabriella Logren, who is creative director at Immutable, talking about perspectives from a creative director.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be talking to you about working with creative, because this is a position that a lot of you are probably going to be in, where someone's going to contract you to make music on their project, and you're going to have to work with a creative director, an audio director, a creative lead, a team. So let's actually talk about what that can look like. So there's one really important thing that I do want to say as we start, and that is that I'm not a musician. Now, unless we count the time that I used to drum in a wedding band as a teenager to make my rent, but I don't think that that's really applicable here. Oh, thank you. Oh my God. I couldn't tell you what a note is though, so don't hold it against me. But that being said, as a creative director, in my personal position, I have to know a lot about different creative disciplines, and I have to have a pretty broad knowledge base. However, I'm only an expert in a few, and I'm very happy to admit when I'm not the expert, and I'm definitely not an expert on sound design and composing because, as I said, I'm not a musician. This actually makes me easier to work with than the dreaded, someone laughed, they've read my beautiful line up there. It's really hard to work with a creative director that believes they're an expert and is a musician. They will have a lot more to say, there'll be a lot more back and forth, and you're going to have a really interesting time. So pray for the former, but be ready for the latter. Now, I want to talk about briefs and audio direction because everyone does do it differently, and a lot of the time, especially when people are coming into composing for games, they don't really know what to expect. So I want to prepare you a little bit and show you my process of putting a brief together and what you would expect working with me, and there'll be some things that are probably going to be consistent with other creative directors, even if they're not exactly the same. All right, so briefs are going to look different depending on the game and the purpose. The brief for an indie game is going to be very different to a live service game, and I'm going to show you a little bit of both. This is a brief for a game called You Will Not Remain, which is a small indie game that I made a few years ago, and it's really atmospheric. The idea is that the music is there to support the story because it is a story-driven game. I used to make briefs that were a lot more complex than this. This is just under 3 pages. This is pretty good. But I used to be really specific about what I wanted because I believed that I was the expert because it was my game and my idea and my vision. And then I was getting music that wasn't really good. It was either soulless or it didn't meet the mark. And I thought that by being really specific, I was going to get exactly what I wanted. But that actually didn't work. So I spoke to one of the best creative directors that I know, Emily Poissonneau, shout out, she's not here, but amazing, you get the chance to meet her, go have a chat. And she looked through my briefs and said, "You're holding their hand too much. They're the expert, not you. You need to give them room to play, and they'll actually be able to solve the problem that the brief poses, and they'll be able to solve it in unexpected ways that are much stronger for it." So taking that, I pared everything back, and it turns out she was right. I needed to give my composers an idea of what the problem was and the problem that they needed to solve, and I needed them to actually use their expertise to make everything better. So now it's a beautiful 3 pages, and it's pretty simple. At the top, you've got deliverables. These are the tracks that I need. Then I've got a little bit of information about the game. This sets the tone, the world. You've got a bit of an idea of what's going on. And then I've got my little bit up here, which is game features. So it's a narrative game. That's important to know. It's pixel art, etc. And then I go into audio pillars, but they're really short and simple because this is the problem that I want the composer to solve for me. I want them to make music that actually shows these pillars. So I want them to be exploring isolation, and I want them to be able to show changes in atmosphere as we go. And then I've just got the tracks here. You can also put examples in. Don't put too many examples in. I find a few is enough. If you're going to include examples, and you can also have examples of what you don't want, make sure you're actually explaining why. And then technical requirements. You always have to have your technical requirements.
1 minute left.
Oh my God, okay. This is a live service game, Guild of Guardians, cool. Working on this was very different because it wasn't about building atmosphere. I had a very different need from the music. And the turnaround time working on a live service game is going to be a lot faster, and you're not going to have as much time for feedback. So I worked with Jacob Leaney on this. I hired Jacob because I knew that he was going to be perfect to make this kind of music, but I had different considerations when I was working on this. Because it's a mobile game, it's a fantasy game, cool, let's do some orchestral music. But I kept reading this research, and it was such an earworm that said that high BPM music actually helps focus and focus for longer periods of time. And I thought, it's a mobile game, not everyone plays with the music on. Why not combine EDM and orchestral into a wonderful monster in the hopes that players play more psychologically, because high BPM music, wonderful. Oh, can I play the track?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, okay, right, I'll stop talking. This is way more interesting, and Jake is just the most amazing composer, and it's worth listening to. So listen to the orchestral EDM together. All right, we'll do a little bit of this one. Anyway, it's really good. He's amazing. All right, wait, it's one more. Wait. Oh, no, sorry. I've clicked to the next person. Apologies.
That's fine. Do you quick wrap up? 15 seconds.
Working with Jacob was amazing. We had a really quick back and forth on that because you'll have to iterate a lot more rapidly when you're working with live service people. And even though your creative is not the expert, you also still need to navigate that relationship well, because at the end of the day, what they say does go. But if you're working with someone who is open to you experimenting, you can get much better results. And Jacob did that so quickly, and there was so few feedback rounds that when Jacob turned around and was like, "Can I record it with a full orchestra? I've got time." We were like, "Sure, how much money do you want?" And it got recorded with an orchestra, which is pretty cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, life comes at you fast when you're doing a speed run. Let that be a warning to the rest of you. You better start with your fast voice. All right, next up we have Luke Kemp, who is a composer, sound designer, and writer for 10 PM Club, talking about shifting perspective.
Cool. Thank you. So, yes, I'm all those things. I'm a composer, sound designer, narrative writer for 10 PM Club, a small indie game studio in here in Melbourne. And I'd say I'm still very new to the industry, about like active 2 years now. But I want to share kind of one thing that really helped me integrate into a growing team and find my place in in the process of how games are made. Entering the industry, I thought I would kind of just stay in my audio lane, be an audio specialist, kind of write some music, do a bit of sound design, and implement that, and move on. But very quickly, I realized that I'll miss like half of the game if I see myself that way. I think this happened about a year in development. We've done a few stints. I've made some music, and we decided to become a studio, form a company, and go for funding. And I hit a fork in the road. If I kept just doing music and sound at the very end of these projects, it just wouldn't be enough. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. In like, music and sound is done so late in the pipeline. It's not really, it's not thought of as an afterthought, but it's treated as such because everyone's just so fucking busy. And you're left feeling like an outsider, like Squidward here. And compared to others who are, coding every day and implementing art assets and, shaping design. And my role would have really stayed this way if I didn't do something about it. And the balance of work would have, completely been off compared to, everyone else. And it's not the type of culture I would want to, start a company with. So this fork in the road, I could, stay as this audio person, come at the end and, do this for a bunch of other projects. Or I could risk being intrusive, kind of step into other rooms and narrative brainstorms and art discussions. So I chose the latter, and I decided to, establish myself as a core part of the team, or at least try to. Did I know if I could be helpful or not? Not really. But I chose to, naively do it anyway. And it did feel really intrusive at the start. I completely imposed myself on my poor teammates. I definitely got strange looks when I started suggesting, story beats and dialogue and gameplay ideas. But I think they got used to it, hopefully. And those moments, built trust. I took initiative in drafting narrative threads, sketching out locations, and before long they trusted me with dialogue and more narrative story, and even things in the code in Unity, which I was absolutely shitting myself doing. I thought I was going to just break everything. But the thing with indie devs is that they're so overwhelmed that they're just so willing to dump work on you if you're capable and show any initiative. So, which was great for me because it gave me chances to prove myself in that way. And I put in the work, and my whole process completely changed. I was, now one of the 2 writers on the project, and I wasn't just writing music anymore. I was helping shape the story that the music belonged to, And it was connected to a much larger creative vision. So, I think in small indie studios, there's rarely, room for pure specialists. If you can pick up one extra skill, whether that's, programming, narrative, or, art, you shift your role into from a support role to a much more essential part of the team, and you start to see a bigger picture. I think with our, local scene here in Melbourne, more small studios are forming, and they'll depend on people who can, stretch across disciplines, and they're held together by people who can, shift perspective and see themselves as a much bigger collective part of a project rather than just their own lane. So don't wait to be invited, I'd say. I'd say try and carve out a unique position for yourself as soon as you can. Try to think about this as early as possible. I seriously think at this indie grassroots level that if you're limiting yourself by thinking you're just in audio, because this is your chance to branch out and try and do as much as you can. Just try and shift your perspective. Great. Just try and shift your perspective, and just from being in the audio industry to a storytelling industry, or something that contributes to a much more game collective team goal, and see where it takes you. Because for me, it really increased the doors that became open to me. And this perspective, it led me to taking on extra skills, and the value I bring to a team is much better now. And I think it's a much more fulfilling process for me. And it has really given me a really early, unique position within the industry. So thank you. Yes, do I get a prize?
Thank you, Luke. Your slide says out of time, but in fact, you were 13 seconds early. Yeah, we're keeping a close eye, and we are going to be keeping a close eye on our next speaker, Tim Shiel, who is a community organizer with Green Music Australia. He's here to give us the tea on community with his talk, Why I'm a Climate Guy Now, and So Can You.
Okay. How are we doing? All right. High score. What's up, high score? Thank you. We've just wasted a few seconds. Why I'm a climate guy now, and so can you. Someone's missing. It's me. But wait, who is this guy? Okay, well, I'm a musician. That's me performing at PAX in 20-something. I forget. Up the top is me with Mindy Meng Wang in China a couple of months ago. And this down here is somebody that I used to know. And I'm in a red jacket there playing with Gautier at a secret show in Los Angeles. I've worked on a couple of games over the years. Duet, yay! And The Gardens Between, yay! Woo! And the VR edition of The Gardens Between that came out a few months ago, yay! I've also worked in radio for a long time. That's a picture of me, and I did radio for 10 years at the ABC, but I quit last year to join the climate movement. Okay, stay with me. I work now at Green Music Australia. It is the national non-for-profit for music and climate. We work with musicians, music and audio workers, that includes a lot of you, to figure out how to use music and sound to drive positive change. But why, Tim? Why did you quit radio and get involved with the climate movement? Well, basically, a couple of charts. We're all nerds. The one on the left shows the increase in global average temperature. The one on the right shows the increase in CO2 emissions. These two have something to do with each other. A couple more charts. They're just fun ones, really. The heat accumulation in the ocean is really intense. And, you know, it's great that wind and solar have increased in the last 10 years, but look at gas and coal continuing to increase well into the 2020s. Just in the last few months, this is a bunch of stuff I ripped from Guardian's Instagram. Shit's real. This is bad, okay? We all know. You guys know. You're with it. This truly is the meme of our times. I think, you know, now that it's just a second feature, but here's just a bunch of people that are in denial. You may know some of these people. You know, people have got different reasons to be in denial because the incentives aren't there for them to shift their behaviour or whatever it is. We ready? All right. Anecdote. These are my daughters. We're playing a game of Everdell. Matilda, I'm going to embarrass her. She's down here. So a few years ago, I'm putting Matilda to bed, and she was like 6 or 7 years old, and we'd been talking about climate change that day, and she said to me, "Dad, what can I do? I'm 7." And I was like, you don't do anything, mate. You're 7. You're cool. Like, you just get older. When you're older, you can work on it, because when you're older, you'll be working on it. But you know what? I'll be working on it, because everyone's going to be working on it eventually. And that's when I realised I was eventually going to be joining the climate movement. What does this have to do with video games, Tim? Well, at Green Music Australia, we believe, correctly, that music wields immense cultural influence. It's not just about being a green artist and making sure that you're doing all the right things, taking plastic water bottles off your rider or using solar power in your studio. It's about the power that music has to be a vehicle for change, to tell stories, to affect emotions, to facilitate connection between us. And this is not just a thing that famous pop stars do or community level musicians do. It's a thing that games do. It's a thing that music and audio in games facilitates. And as people in this room that are involved in this incredible interactive art form, we all have the potential to drive change. Games can cover difficult topics like cancer, like love, like war. Games can help establish a player's relationship with nature and with the natural world. Journey, Terra Nil, Firewatch, even Baby Steps in its own way is exploring how we have as humans a relationship to nature. So I encourage all of you to think a little bit more. Maybe you're thinking already a little bit about this, but you might be able to think a bit more about it in your practice. And a reminder, it's not just about the content of your games and of your music, it's about the power we have as a group of people. When we come together around a shared purpose or a shared issue, much like what we're doing this weekend at High Score, we really can create real change as a group of people. 1 minute, holy shit. Birds. This is a flock of birds. When one bird makes a tiny choice, it probably doesn't feel to that bird like they're making much of a difference, but that affects the birds around them. It sends a signal to them about what direction they're all going to head in, and eventually massive change happens. So if you take one thing away, it's that you have power to make a difference in your smallest changes. Be like birds when you approach the issues you care about. And just a tiny side note, climate is an intersectional issue. If you care about climate, then you also care about Indigenous and land rights. You also care about war and genocide. You also care about wealth inequality, gender inequality. These things are all interconnected. The root causes are all the same. I encourage you to come together as a community. Think about how you might do so. If you're not sure, come and find me for a chat, or follow me on Instagram, or join Green Music Australia using the QR code right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim. Recycle, Tim, recycle. Good grief. All right, we have one last speed run for you, and then we will be jumping to a Q&A with all of our speakers. So if you want to, don't use those QR codes to get into Slido, they're the wrong ones, but use them for other stuff to follow Tim. But we will now be hearing from Natalie Jeffries, who is a freelance composer, about soul developing a video game as an audio professional.
Hi, my name's Natalie, and I'm going to be talking about soul developing my game, Alexithymia. A quick intro, I am primarily a composer, a sound designer, and an orchestrator. However, last year, I was given a grant from Screen Australia to produce my own microscale game about alexithymia, which is a condition where you struggle to identify and describe your feelings. Let's quickly skip to the end because I want to talk about what I want you to take away. So first of all, what a great talk. You're so welcome. Secondly, this is a mental health talk in disguise. I need you to be kind to yourself. Know that you have creative instincts beyond audio, and most importantly, to know the only right way to make a game is the way that's accessible for you. You're going to hear the word accessible a lot. Let's go back to the start. I'm going to tell you what I should have done when I was making a game and what I've actually done. Overall, I should have kept it simple, stupid. And I should have made a game in the same style that I like to play. Instead, I kept it complicated, stupid. And I made a visual novel, which is not a game that I usually play, a genre that I usually play. However, it was an accessible entry point for me, and it served the narrative really well. I do really recommend choosing an element of game development to guide you through the process. That can be narrative, gameplay, music, whatever, which does lead me onto music and sound design. I should have prioritized this. After all, I want a strong games portfolio. I could have made a game that suits my dream score. However, I didn't do that. I prioritized the narrative. I'm not going to get into the details today, but alexithymia is a very complex, intimate condition. So my hybrid symphonic dream score wouldn't suit the narrative, and it was more important to me to highlight that. It's also worth noting I am a performer and I'm a poet, and so storytelling has always been my priority. On to voiceover. I should have kept it simple. It's a visual novel. For those who aren't familiar, usually it ranges from bleep bloops to a little bit of voice acting. However, I decided to do full voice acting. 6 actors, and 3 of them were for the same character. I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. It gave the game a lot of soul, and it was really important to me to highlight that neurodivergent people are not just white. However, I do regret putting it so early in the timeline. I like to think my poety instincts worked well in the script. However, I could have had more time to refine it. Art and animation, what I should have done is probably hired an artist. You can see my art prior before here, not much digital work. I should have fully animated and lip-synced it, and I probably should have created art without a reference, like a real artist. Here is an example of how I made up for a lack of experience with soul and comedy and attention to detail. Another example is that the text you've been reading is my own handwriting, which is in the game. I stuck to still images and small animations. I developed the style throughout the creation process, although I did stick to the cel-shaded design. However, any improvements you see are all thanks to our favourite TV show, Archer. I also drew a lot of things with a reference. For example, The Sims. Stock photos. Be careful with this, make sure it's Creative Commons only. Memes. And my own photos. On to programming. I probably should have hired a programmer. And if not, I should be well into programming and learning to code from scratch. I should have used Unity so that I'd get more opportunities with indie studios, and it has such a strong correlation with 2D art. However, first of all, I barely programmed at all, so you pray for me. And I'm using Unreal visual scripting function because it is accessible to me. I will reluctantly admit that at last year's GCAP Local Lounge, I programmed alexithymia as a PowerPoint because I ran out of time. I do regret that because I cringe at the lack of quality that was there. However, to show that there are creative solutions available, this is a recording from the PowerPoint last year.
I'm fizzy. There's fireworks going off in my chest. There are explosions in my body.
So back to the takeaways. You have creative instincts beyond audio. You can join the conversation, and the right way to make a game is the way that is accessible for you. Thank you, everybody. You can find me out in the lunch area at the AGSC table, and I have some sneaky stickers if anybody wants a sticker, if you're that kind of person. Thank you.
You can stay up on stage because, yeah, and I'm going to invite all of our speakers up on stage now to take seats. Where are we going to go? Are you going to go that end or no? I'll go that end. There's no hand mic in that end.
Because it's the sole chair.
Yeah, I did not pay that much attention to how the chairs were laid out. But now we're going to do a bit of a Q&A. So again, if you would like to ask any of our speakers anything, you can chuck it in the Slido. I'll start from our first speaker, Ella. You talked about the fact that as a creative directors maybe need to sometimes learn to lean on the expertise of the people that they're working with more. But I'm going to flip the script on you.
Okay.
How does it work the other way? In what way do composers and sound designers maybe most trip up on not trusting the expertise of other people in their team, whether that be creative directors or otherwise?
I think sometimes composers don't always ask the right questions to get the information that they need to do the best job possible with the music. And I think that one way that they can improve that working relationship back and forth is to get better at asking the correct questions and asking why something needs to be done a certain way or why a certain parameter has been put in so they can better understand to then fit the need of the game. And sometimes when you're working really quickly as well, if you're not an in-house like musician, composer, sound designer, you don't have as much time to tease that information out when you're working on a quick turnaround contract. So I think that that's sometimes where they get a little bit tripped up because they think they understand what the brief is saying. And let's be real, a lot of the time, the reason they think they understand is because the creative director has done a bad job of the brief. Like I do want to be clear that usually it's like our fault if something happens, but being able to stop a lot of those issues before they become bigger and then more reworks have to be done, which is more time investment, which means that you're not getting paid as much per hour for the time you're putting in, getting good at asking questions and understanding why parameters are in place and really like teasing down to the detail of why something has to be done the way that they've laid it out, I think makes a really big difference, especially for me. Like I love getting asked questions about my briefs so that I can expand, and sometimes it shows that actually my brief was shit and that's on me.
I will also say if anyone has anything to jump in on any of these questions, please feel free to as well. I think you hit on a great point there that understanding the why is so important in almost everything that we do. I don't think just in creative industries, but in life. When you understand the why, you know how to do things so that they're successful, but you also know what you can change and how to push boundaries and things like that. Which, Natalie, I want to talk to you about because you, in your talk, did a lot of should-haves of what you wish you had done differently. But I think there's space for mess, don't you? I think there's something to be said for naivety being almost a superpower, whereby when you don't know how things should work, you just mess around. You find a new way of doing things. Do you think that that's the case in your situation, or do you think it was just a hindrance?
No, I think that is the case. I think when you are approaching it from a fresh angle, you are able to find creative solutions. And so I don't think anyone should be deterred from trying to start the process because I truly was going in with nothing. And I put that in my grant application. I was like, I have never programmed before. So I'm going to be learning to do that if you give me this grant. And they gave me the grant. And so even grant, it's worth knowing that even grant organisations know, I mean, for this specific grant at least, know that there is a learning curve and this is a professional development grant, essentially.
And what do you think it was that made you stand out and get the grant, even if you didn't have those skills?
So what they told me on the phone was the reason, two things. One was that they felt that the subject was timely. I think there's a lot of discussion about neurodivergence at the moment, rightfully so. And so it fit into that well. And the other part was that it was a realistic plan. I didn't lie to them and say, I can do all of these platforms and I'm going to monetize it like this. I just said my vision for this process is really minimal, and so they said it was achievable, basically is the word. So I think if you're going to go through that process, this was the Emerging Game Makers Grant, be realistic with yourself and figure out how the concept of your game fits into the wider discussion. Yeah.
I think you bring up something nice there as well about it being timely and kind of being tapped into more than just your own world and more than just like I do think that's really important as well, but sometimes looking at the current climate, wink wink nudge nudge, Tim, get your mic ready, looking at the current climate of the world can be really important as well for pushing change, for making something that is interesting to more people. Tim, I'm throwing that to you now.
Yo.
So I guess my question is, how do you go from caring about something to doing something?
Oh, it's easy.
You would say that.
You just fix everything and then we're all good.
Yeah, right on.
I mean, look, I think a really important thing to just say up front is that you can't put too much pressure on yourself as one person. I mean, there's a reason why I'm always banging on about community, which is a word that can sometimes feel like a buzzword. And my job description at Green Music Australia, the charity I work at, is community organiser, which for clarity is different to a community manager, which is a role that we're often familiar with in games, which is like a person that makes sure that people aren't being too toxic on the message boards or whatever.
It was my first job in games.
Oh my God.
It was awful.
Was it your favourite job in the world?
No.
Did you have appropriate levels of psychological support?
No.
It's a difficult job. My role is community organiser, which actually has a bit more of a background in the union movement or the labour movement, which is to say the fundamental role of a community organiser in a union is to go around to all the workers at the hospital or the factory or the school or wherever it might be and say, hey, you guys can get a better deal if you all come together and decide what you care about and then take that to your employers. I'm not a union rep, it's not my job, but the idea is the same. Like my job is actually to go around to all the musicians and the people who make music and audio all around the country and say, hey, I don't have the answer right now, you don't have the answer, but what I believe in is the power of all of us to come together and figure it out. And work together as one. So that sounds like a deflective
It did,
thing,
yeah. I'm not
because I'm saying like, I don't really know what you personally should do, but I do know that if you want to make a difference, you won't feel as good about it doing it on your own as you will if you come around a group of people. And it doesn't even have to be Green Music Australia or even climate. It's just think about what you care about and find what group of people or what organisation you can be part of to start working towards it. You'll be happier, you'll have a better life. You'll make change.
So maybe it's kind of like don't be afraid to find important things that you care about and make sure that you're looking for ways to integrate that into what you're doing as a holistic thing rather than seeing it as a separate problem that needs to be fixed somehow. It's this idea of saying, I want it fixed and therefore how can I start integrating that into my everyday little bits?
I think so. Yeah, it's a process. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and be a climate warrior and your game is suddenly all about, regrowth or whatever. Like that's not how it works. But I do think we're kind of living in a very kind of important, perilous moment where the world's either going to go more to shit or it's going to go less to shit, one or the other. And I hope that we go in the less to shit direction. And if we do, I think then art and culture, the stuff that we do, whether it's making music or contributing to a game, it plays an important role in that shift towards things being less shit. And I think also there are going to be trends towards funding is going to be directed to games that have impact outcomes and to culture and art that has impact outcomes. As the economic value of the things we do continues to plummet, I hope that the cultural and social value of the things that we do will be more recognised. So there will be funding and opportunities coming from other directions, whether it's the private sector or government. I have to believe that because the alternative to that is that we just keep burning coal and gas and going to war with each other. And, I have to believe that we're going in that direction. And if we are, then I think, think about what you care about. And if it's not already integrated a little bit into how you work and what you're making, maybe just let yourself imagine in that creative way what you could do if you let yourself go there.
Luke, you are at the beginning of your career, still young and wonderful and not yet beat down by the world, I hope. How do you kind of navigate starting something new where there's all this excitement and energy and passion and desire to have a bright future, do something fun, and the idea that, you know, should you be doing something important? Is that something that you factor in, and it's fine if it's not? Or are you still in a stage where you're like, look, it doesn't matter how important a message is if it's not delivered well, and therefore we need to focus on doing our job well, making games well, before we think about any of the other stuff?
Yeah, well, speaking for myself, you know, going into this role of narrative, you have to draw from things you experience and know. So for me, it's like an impasse. I can't not think about all these other things and take it in. Especially, I don't know, if that's just more me being young and I'm going into this world and I'm seeing everything here and I'm like, you know, you're angsty, you have to look for some outlet for it, you know, and I don't know if it's that or if it's just natural for narrative just to, you know, draw from things you know. So, yeah, working through this is, yes, you have to tell it well, but for me, I can't not add things that I experience into what I do. It's just natural, and I think if you look at all art, it's what it has been doing for the last, you know, several hundred years. And I think that's what makes art great. It's just as much a time capsule it is like a commentary on how we live right now. So, yeah.
That was an extremely eloquent answer to what I will admit was a very difficult question. So thank you. We've got a question from Slido regarding music briefs. How do you access those as someone moving from the music industry to the gaming industry? Are they shared or posted places publicly where they're accessible?
Ooh, that's a really good point. I am happy to make my brief available online. If people would like that, I will set it to public, make a copy, come find me. I'm more than happy to give you the link to that. I'm open to suggestions on how to get people that link. More than happy to share it. Obviously, briefs are going to look different from any creative team that sends you a brief, but I'm more than happy to share mine. That is the Google document, though a lot of the time I also build out briefs in slides, so don't be surprised if you see those around. But I don't know of many resources online where you can actually find briefs in general for existing products. It's not something that I've seen much, if you know.
No, I was going to say, it's my understanding that it's kind of one of those things that when you're not yet fully doing them or in that world, it feels like there's a proper way to do them. Mm-hmm. But then when you start doing it and you start seeing other people's, you realize you can do whatever you want.
It's true.
Yeah.
There's one way I have seen it work, but there's one way I just wouldn't recommend. I've seen briefs done in Miro and it hurts me. I just don't think that's the place for it.
You can do whatever you want, but beware.
Just maybe not that one. But like if you make it work, like Slay, I would love that for you. I haven't. But typically I think like Google Docs, you'll find stuff on SharePoint regularly, and also slides is normally how you'll get your briefs.
And I'm sure like just give us a quick rattle off of the basic points that you need in it to just make sure that you cover everything off.
So if you're making a brief, if you're the creative, I think that you should always have a little bit of information about the game, its features, as well as your audio pillars. So pick 2 to 3. You can have more, don't. It just makes everything much harder. Make sure you've got your deliverables right at the beginning. So say how many tracks you need, how long you need them to be, whether they're looping or not looping, and then have your examples. You can have examples which are the things that you like. Just make sure you say why. Don't just be like, here are some tracks. So many creative directors do that, and it makes everyone's life much harder. Explain what you like. And you can also have examples of what you don't like, because that sometimes is more useful than just providing things that you like, because it means that there's all this stuff that they won't go near. Just explain why. And then technical requirements. Make sure you're saying what format you need things delivered in, file sizes. Sometimes the file size doesn't matter. It can be huge, and that's how we get games with massive, it takes you like a day to download it. But sometimes it's a really small game or it's a mobile game and everything has to be optimized. And then just any other additional information that goes with your technical requirements, which will change by project, by engine, by whatever. Sometimes briefs will actually have instructions for how the composer should actually be inputting the music into engine. That isn't unheard of. So that does happen, but that will be spoken about and will be part of the contract cost, and that will be very clear up front if that's something that you're expected to do. It's not that common, but it definitely does happen, so I want to flag it.
Gorgeous. Natalie, as a solo dev, how difficult is it to get government funding? What's the process like?
It's similar with all grants, where it feels very... in general,
I feel like that Sai said it all.
Yeah, it's that kind of, it's just like, I was quite surprised that I got the grant for alexithymia because what I said before, I was pretty honest about how I had no experience programming and I was pretty much doing everything from scratch for myself. I have applied for many grants, just in general music, whatever. I applied for many grants over the years, and it's a numbers game. You unfortunately have to have thick skin. You just have to apply. You just have to try, get advice from other people that have had successful grants. That too. Get some advice from people who have had success with grant. I shouldn't have said it again. Yeah, it is unfortunately just a numbers game. It's a little hard to say. This is just the hearsay from the streets. I have heard that Screen Australia, I'm guessing because it's a federal thing, like it's over all states, can be a little trickier. That's not to say they're being too harsh. It's just a comment on how many people they get. Sorry, I know that's not a very encouraging answer. But
could I add a potentially encouraging thought? From my perspective, the games industry is very communal, very sharing. Everybody wants everyone else to succeed. While there always is going to be competition if you're trying to get grants, competing against each other. From my perspective, most people who have gotten grants before would probably be pretty happy to chat, share, even if it's literally just like share what they submitted so you can get a bit of an idea.
Yeah, and I should say the positives of that, and I can be corrected on this if this isn't true, is my view of it is that there's been a much stronger highlight on games in the last few years in terms of government support, government funding. So even if it's hard to get, if you're not successful with a grant, the Australian games industry is kind of, the indie scene at least, is kind of run on grants, you know, like it's definitely not impossible. You just have to be patient and you just have,
And you have to remember to apply for them by the deadline. Yes. I feel like that sometimes can be the hardest part of it all. Yeah, I just saw someone going, oh. Yeah. Luke, do you struggle with getting put in just non-music roles, or are you able to advertise yourself and get work as a double, perhaps even triple package?
Yeah, well, recently after, doing this, I've been getting so much more, opportunities for these multiple roles, which is why it was so eye-opening. It was like, oh shit, like I could have just done this earlier, and like I could have done, like you're almost shoehorning music with like other parts of what you deliver, because music, it's almost like it's just an assumption that it's just getting outsourced at the end, So I'm just thinking of like I'm just Trojan horsing my fucking music into this game by like delivering. I can do narrative and I can do all these other things that are, much more important in the earlier parts of development in the game dev's eyes. So, yeah, it's been.
But how do you balance that with like not burning out and being able to do what you're passionate about, what you actually enjoy, versus like it sounds like you really enjoy narrative, but let's say you didn't and you're kind of just doing it to try and add value.
Yeah, I don't really get burnout. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, ooh, to be young.
Yeah, give it
I'm
time.
young. I have energy.
Yeah, so I'm just
You
exactly.
will.
Yeah. So exactly, I'm taking
Pre-burnout,
advantage of my
post-burnout.
youth. Yeah.
Mid-burnout?
I'll be. But yeah, I don't know. I try and add as much value as I can to whatever I'm doing, even if it means like not doing exactly what the developer wants me to do. It'll help me in the long run to stay focused on what I'm doing and, just keep on going. Because I don't know. Burnout is a thing, I haven't really experienced, but I do get that feeling of like, oh shit, like I've got like no days off for the next like couple months, and it's just like, okay.
Everyone in the room is like, Luke, just you wait.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, is there anyone in this industry that's not like slightly neurodivergent that hyper focuses on what they're doing?
That's true, but that doesn't prevent you from burning out. It's just like a fast track.
I know, but it's just like a cycle of hyper focusing on and just adding stuff that you think is of value.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about self-care later. No, but I do think there is something to be said for also allowing yourself to lean in when it feels good and when it's energizing. And I think sometimes that can be a hard balance to strike when you're working in something that you're so passionate about. And it's like I was talking about with Sarah in a previous session of balancing getting paid versus investing in projects that don't have a lot of money because you are in a position to be able to do so. It's all just this very complicated dance of what can I give and what do I need.
Yeah. Well, I think, part of it that helps is I don't engage in the complicated part of it. I just do it, like just focus on what's in front of me.
Yeah.
Kind of like, tunnel vision. And it is really easy to get that tunnel vision, which, I don't really have a good answer. I don't think, unless it's like just work harder. But I don't want to give that answer.
He didn't mean that. He meant work within your capacity. Yes. This is me single-handedly fighting crunch culture.
Exactly.
Tim, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that I guess I personally often see the Australian industry and Melbourne industry as being very indie. I think that's because where my heart really is. So I'm sorry if I'm excluding any more AAA studios, but what are some of the pitfalls that you think particularly indies who maybe have more say and control over what they're doing fall into in regards to maybe not thinking as sustainably or thinking as broadly in their development process? Did that question make sense?
It did.
Yeah, okay,
Thank
great.
you. I probably, this is going to sound like me dodging the question again.
And I'll loop right back around.
Please do. But to me, I just feel like it's less about pointing out, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Like when it comes to how an indie studio runs its business, a lot of it's the same as like the stuff you would do in your house. Like, are you using green energy? Are you with the right energy provider? What's your waste doing? There's a big giant question mark with games and music as well around like data centers and the amount of power and the tools that we use. And rather than kind of say, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, your studio isn't very green. You guys stop making games. I think the thing that I guess I'm speaking from the perspective of Green Music Australia, which has been around since 2013. It was started by one muso, a viola player from Canberra, who just was mad about the environment and just decided
being mad.
He was mad. He was mad. Viola players. Got any viola players in the house? There we go. He was just very passionate about it, and he saw that there wasn't really anyone organising or rallying people around it. And so, record labels and venues and music festivals weren't really doing much because they didn't know what to do. No one had done the work to figure out what could be done. And he didn't know either, but he just knew that if he started something, started pulling people in around his orbit, started doing a bit of work together, a lot of it voluntarily, that they would start coming up with solutions. And now we're 10-ish years later, and we work with a lot of the biggest music festivals in Australia. We work with all of the major labels and the majority of the indies. We work with all the peak bodies, and Green Music Australia has provided the resources and that knowledge. So I guess, I'd love to see, to my knowledge, there isn't necessarily a similar thing in Australia for games yet. I think it's only a matter of time until that emerges, and I guess
that's what Green Man Gaming was.
Yeah, okay, right.
No, sorry, that was a joke.
Yeah.
It's a storefront, sorry. I thought more people would know it and that joke was really going to land, but I've just disrupted everything. Go on, Tim.
There are people passionate about it. There are games getting, Blacktasia, for example, there are games getting made that think about our relationship to country and our relationship with nature. And there are people who are thinking, I'm sure that a lot of the studios in Australia, the indie studios, do have sustainability policies that they're working on. I guess my point is more like, if there is someone who happens to be sitting in this room, and it only takes one person, and he's sitting there thinking, this mad middle-aged dad, he's onto something. I really want to start Green Games Australia. I would urge you to think about doing it, because that's a gap that someone needs to fill, to start figuring out how to answer the question, what do people do?
And don't take this as like a sledge, but what is the role of an organisation like Green Music Australia versus, There was this real era in our lives, I feel like in the 2010s, where everything was about raising awareness. And that was kind of it. Like, we're raising awareness. And it's like, okay, that's great. We're aware. Now what? So what is the role of an organization like Green Music Australia beyond just raising awareness? And thus, what can we learn from that if we were to have something in the game space specifically?
Great question. It's two things. Specifically, one is providing resources and knowledge. So Green Music Australia, for example, if you go to our website and explore, and this may be relevant to many of you because we have a lot of musicians here, you will find out about how to do physical products sustainably. If you want to make vinyl for your OST, but you're not sure if it's really the right thing to do because vinyl is made from PVC, it's a terrible, terrible product. We just released a guide on how to do that ethically, and the providers around Australia that we encourage you to talk to about potentially doing it. If you're an artist as well as a composer, for example, which some of us are, we have like a 70-page PDF that goes step by step through how to green every single part of your life as a working musician. So when we also run like programs like Zoom calls and alliances and like industry alliances to just get people talking and thinking about the solutions of the future. So that's one half of it. And the other part of it is the community building, which is what I personally do at our organisation, which is really just rallying everyone up. And it's not just about raising awareness, though that we still need to do that. Like, a lot of Australians want action on climate change, like it's over 80%. But not as many Australians know like that Australia is the second biggest exporter of coal in the world, for example, and that we often talk about, as a country that we're doing all right with emissions and things are going okay. But as a country, we actually facilitate an incredible amount of fossil fuel burning around the world. I'm not saying everyone needs to become a climate expert, but there is still some awareness that needs to be done and ongoing. But the community building is really more about helping people come together to take collective action. Whether that is participating in divestments and boycotts, or whether it is creative campaigns that put pressure on specific companies. There's a lot of action taking place. So yeah, the awareness is still part of it, but that's what an organisation like Green Music Australia exists to do. And we work as part of a broad climate movement that also includes Greenpeace, the Australian Conservation Foundation, AYCC, which is like the youth climate organisation, but also like Footy for Climate, like that's a thing. Surfers for climate, that's a thing. Parents for climate, teachers for climate. We're all waking up, right, to the moment that we're in, and each different part of our society faces the challenge in a different way and provides a different piece of the puzzle of the solution. So
it sounds like a lot of it is essentially creating a space where people can find the solutions that other people have already figured out to fix a problem. And let's all save that brain space. If someone else has already figured it out, let's use it. Ella, this question is for you. Do you have a workflow for evaluating sound, or do you just feel it don't like?
Ooh, interesting. I think when it comes to my day job, I probably approach it differently between when I'm working at my day job and when I'm working on my own indie games. When it comes to my day job, I don't really have a lot of time. So I'm reviewing in little snatches and pockets that I can get around 6 hours of meetings a day. Mm-hmm. Ew. And that means that I'm listening, and I will try and understand whether I think it's going to fit in the game as it is, and if it actually meets the brief and what I need it to do. And if it does, I will approve something immediately. I don't overthink it, because if I know that it's going to work and I have a really strong feeling, it's my job to have that feeling and it's my job to approve it. And the less time that I spend in feedback rounds, the happier the composer's going to be and the quicker that I'm going to get a finished product in game. So you'll always review something before it goes to the final. And then once the final is delivered, you can implement it in game immediately. So it's very vibes-based, but a lot of creative stuff can be quite vibes-based when it's being reviewed. Some people have like more formulas that they go through, or they want to make sure that they're meeting really specific things. But as long as I know that my brief is being met, it works in the capacity that it needs to work, and I always outline that capacity quite firmly, I will approve something immediately if it's ready. And if somebody gets me the perfect track on the first try, you know what, I'll approve it. I don't want to spend time going back and forth. I don't need to do that. A lot of people will go back and forth anyway because they feel that they need to, or I've paid for this many revisions. I want it to be perfect. But if it's already perfect, you're just making it worse at a certain point. So I will listen. If it's good, let's go. If not, I'll sit with it for a little bit, try and figure out what I need to change in order for it to perfectly meet the need that I've set out. And then I'll get that feedback back to them and ask if they have any questions. Most of the time I just do this on Slack because it's so fast and that's what's going to be the easiest for me. And then I give them the opportunity to ask me questions, you know, sort of like narrow it down. But then on my indie games, I probably spend a bit more time with it than I would in my day job because I have the luxury of that and I can actually have a bit of a closer working relationship with the composer. And I feel like that overall does make the music stronger, but I don't always have that luxury when I've got to do something very quickly. So it changes a little bit depending on the context that I'm briefing and, you know, commissioning music.
Yeah. And I think that also kind of feeds into the idea that it is really useful in this industry to be learning more ways of describing things. That was a terrible way to describe that.
No, it's true though. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, learning how to drill down into the why, as you were kind of saying before, to really explain why something feels the way that it does and thus have a better ability to ask for what you want.
Giving feedback's a skill as well that takes a really long time to own. And I've gotten better at it, but I'm still not perfect. And I used to give a lot more feedback. These days, I'm like, Ella, if you can't write it in a dot point, you're not clear enough. And someone has the opportunity to misunderstand what you're telling them. So getting good at giving feedback as well is really important. And that just comes with time and also understanding who you're working with, because the way that you give feedback as well is going to change based on the project, based on your contractor, based on your in-house musician. But it's hard to really be able to distill why something's important, how it's important, and be able to communicate it in a way that someone understands. I still struggle.
My hot tip for that is go and watch like TikTok videos or whatever where people do like interior design breakdowns. I know that sounds silly, but honestly, when you see someone like really accurately tell you what the difference is between two different taps or something, you start to get a better idea of the things that can feed into differences and how to explain them. And I think all of these sorts of ideas kind of can coalesce together in a really useful way for communicating to each other. How do you go, this one's going to be for Natalie and Luke, how do you go about getting a project off the ground? How can I bring together a team and secure funding?
I'm going to let you take this one because I'm a sole developer, so I am the team.
Well, how did you bring yourself together? No, we'll let you go first.
Well, what I look for, what I try to do is if the core of the idea needs to resonate really well for it to almost be like in a pitch itself, you know, like that idea has to inspire so many more ideas that it could fractal so much that, you know, that I'm just so eager to work on it, because when I'm excited for things like that, I work so much more better. Yeah.
In terms of getting my game going, for me, I'm probably going to tangent it a bit, so please rein me in if I need to. For me, because I have some issues capacity. I have chronic migraines, so every once in a while I go through a period where I can't work too much. Just to comment on what it is, but because of that, I had to choose the way I kept it going. The way I started and kept it going is just doing what felt I had the most energy for at that time. So in terms of if you're in a place of thinking, I have this game idea and I really want to get it going, think in that moment, what are you the most driven to do? If that is art, then do it. That's something I've had to try and accept for myself, and part of the reason I haven't done much programming is because in those moments I've had to go, I need to choose what is going to be the most productive for me right now. And that can go for you regardless of capacity in that moment. If you're just not sure where to start, just think about what's, to say it in a really wanky way, think about what's calling to you the most, you know. Sorry, I'm not sure if that answered the question or not. I was thinking more in terms of how I kept it going, because I feel like I've had to get it off the ground like 5 times now. You know what I mean? So like that, I guess that's my advice. I think,
you know, surrounding yourself with the right people and finding what you're good at. Like I know some people that are just so good at, you know, like adding more ideas to an existing idea. And if you're better at that, then do that. Don't have to, make the core idea yourself if you're not good at that. Just try and, find what you're really good at, find what your strengths are, and just work in that way, I think.
Well, to close out this Q&A, I'm going to do another mini speed round with each of you. This question is for all of you, and you're going to have about a minute to answer, though I will not be timing, though I will be giving stern looks if I feel that you're going long. But I feel like a common theme that's come out of our discussion has been around being heard. Right, it's been around whether it be communication between a creative director and a team, whether it be broadcasting a wider, more important message, whether it be sharing personal experiences. It's been about being heard. So I want to hear from you. Number one, what do you think is the biggest barrier that most people may not be aware of that they trip up on when they're trying to be heard? And if you have time, what is your biggest tip for making sure that you're heard in whatever capacity that is relevant to your field? And I'll let anyone jump in.
Creative vision is really hard to communicate, is what I want to say. And since being a creative director, I've only come to understand this more and more. I already understood it a little bit, but as I've gone, keeping a team aligned to a sole vision is really hard, especially because games is such a deeply collaborative medium, and there are so many people that come in and so many people that are experts that also have their own ideas on how things go, and keeping that all aligned to get to where you need to go is really challenging. So I find that working on my own communication skills is key, and you never stop learning, and you will always have new problems. And also just learning more about different communication styles for your team members so that you can meet your team members where they are. And just having alignment meetings, even on indie teams, I highly recommend it, because things can go out of alignment so much faster than you realize. And then all of a sudden you have a build that is completely different than what you expected, and you have to sleuth it and work your way back to understand where the misunderstanding happened, why it happened, and then fix it. And you waste time. And especially in indie dev, we're working on government grants, we don't have a lot of money, we might honestly just be working for free as well. And that time is so valuable, it is deeply valuable. So I think more alignment, working on your own communication style, getting comfortable asking questions, and also learning when to push back and when not to is really hard, and learning how to give feedback in a way that isn't going to upset people, but is still going to ensure that you get what you need from a team member or a department, or even from the team as a whole is important too. And looking at it, a lot of people say fail fast. This is a tangent. This is a really common thing we hear in game dev, and it makes complete sense. You want to, fail fast so that you can learn something and move on. But I don't think that the framing as failure is always good, because unfortunately you can internalize it in different ways, and it can make you feel like, what's the point in doing something if I'm going to fail, even though I know that we'll pivot. So it's not so much about failing, but it's about trying something, learning and pivoting. And nothing is a failure if you learn something. And that goes for communication, that goes for feature design, that goes for everything. It's about learning as you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, you're up next.
Sorry, the eye contact.
Yeah, well, you looked at me for half a second and you're on.
I'm going to put my composer hat on for a second. So I'm thinking about the relationship between a director and a composer. For me, I've really had to develop my assertiveness, not assertiveness in terms of fighting or anything, more in terms of being really clear, understanding what they want. And so I think being heard sometimes starts with just being firm with the regular things you're saying. For example, I'll be in a Zoom meeting and say, okay, so I just want to stop you there. Can I just summarize what you've said? Have I got this right? As opposed to kind of pretending you know what's going on. You don't, I think sometimes being honest and being just firm with what you have to say can develop a trust, and that leads to being heard. Another thing I'd say, if you're at the beginning of a relationship with a dev, or like pitching or however you want to look at it, connecting to them more on a storytelling basis than a music basis. Like, I have always found that I've had the most success when I've talked to someone and been like, oh yeah, it's like this game, I really love the art, and that, you know, talk to them about making a game as an overall craft, as opposed to this is what I can do, because it's kind of very like focused on you, as opposed to making them feel like they're in a collaborative environment, and it makes it easier to feel heard if it's a two-way street, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Luke?
Yeah, I think, latching onto everyone's ideas, kind of, like pitching. I only think like an idea is like 20%, like 80% of it is like getting your idea into their head as well. So, yeah.
Inception.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, letting it grow in their subconscious. Yeah, it's like something you don't really realize until you're in it. It's like, oh, I have all these ideas, but like they don't see it the same way I do. So you have to really like, learn their communication style and come at it from like their perspective, a storytelling perspective, to really make them like, resonate with the ideas as you are. So yeah.
And that to me also sounds like recognizing when someone's not understanding you and changing tact.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tim, we got quick.
Ooh, I guess I'll interpret the question as, being heard as being creative. We live in a time where the very act of being creative is devalued. It doesn't really fit in our systems the way we live. So the act of choosing to devote some big part of your life and part of your heart to making art or making a culture takes courage. You're brave to do it. And we also happen to live in a time of great isolation. Loneliness is so endemic. That we're all struggling with that in different ways. So I would say that that's probably one of the biggest challenges to people kind of speaking up or wanting or being heard or being creative, is this feeling that they're on their own. But I think I love high score. I'm a high score lifer. The fact that you're here means that you are engaging with other people like yourself. Hopefully you're making some new friendships and new relationships. I'm like a broken record, but community is it is really the answer. Human relationships, connections is the foundation, the underpinning of so much other things like contentment and positive futures. And so, yeah, for anyone who feels like they're struggling with getting heard, if they're lacking confidence or they're feeling isolated or they're feeling like they're on the out, I think, the answer is to find the people who will give you that support, whether it's an organisation like a Green Music Australia or an event like High Score or, a group chat with your friends.
I can't help but add my 2 cents on top of that as well, which is to say, I get it. I also hate leaving the house. I'm such a community-driven person, but as soon as I have to leave the house, I'm like, I don't want to go. I get there. I have the best time, but I never want to leave the house. But kudos to you for making it out the door and coming, because it does make such a difference. And having that connection goes a really, really long way. And also, my answer to my own question would be, don't underestimate the value of being regulated. You would be so surprised at how it changes communication, not only in how you communicate, but how you receive others. So don't be afraid to take a breath, take a moment, and always check in with yourself. Think, what do I need to be regulated so that I can have this conversation in a productive manner? Because, Lordy, I've spent so many years of my life very dysregulated, and it does not get you as far as you could be. And on that note, let's take a little break. Have some time to regulate. Have a